continuing the journey with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the study of the Qur'an, and in specific Surat Al Kahf, that we highlighted in the beginning, in the muqaddamah, and in the first introduction, that we want to take the science of the Qur'an and we want to advance upon the technical and the academic study that many of us that we offer towards many of the sciences, and try to bring about a practical application or implementation and imitation of the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you find the famous Hadeeth as narrated by Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, كَانَ خُلُقُهُ الْقُرْآنِ, that his character was like the Qur'an, meaning that he stuck to the halal and abstained from the haram and adorned himself with every single character or characteristic that you find within the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And so we should take the wisdom of the Qur'an and combine that with the wisdom of the wise individuals, the ulama or the pious predecessors, because we find that in general the wise individuals are those who are at an elderly age. Thus you find some various narrations talking about that the age of wisdom is arba'una sana, is 40 years. Even in the Qur'an you find reference to that, حتى إذا بلغ 40 sana, until when man reaches the prime age of 40 years, he asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give him the tawfiq and ability to be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and then to his parents. So all this highlights that the age of wisdom is ma fawqa 40, whatever comes after the age of 40. Thus you find the age of revelation given to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the age of 40. However, at times it can be the young who have wisdom as well. So it doesn't negate that young people cannot have wisdom as well. Even there's some narration that goes back to Umar, who talks about that foolishness, or if the word is, if it's possible to use in such an environment, stupidity, and it belongs to young individuals. That young individuals are always overzealous, and you'll find that amongst them. But on occasions we do find wisdom amongst the young, in the shabab or the fitya. And thus you find that what we'll come to in this surah, talking about these young individuals or the companions of the cave. But before that you find inside the Qur'an, قَالُوا سَمِعْنَا فَتًى يَذْكُرُهُمْ يُقَالُ لَهُ إِبْرَاهِيم. We heard of a young boy يُقَالُ لَهُ إِبْرَاهِيم, by the name of Ibrahim. So here's a reference of Ibrahim alayhi salam at a young age, and abstaining from shirk and highlighting this incorrect belief that his people had, or his father had in specific as well. Likewise you find وَإِذْ قَالَ مُوسَى لِفَتَاهُ, when Musa said to his young companion, his comrade, as we'll come to that part of Yusha bin Nun, who is a comrade of Musa alayhi salam. Likewise you find many of the Sahaba, many of the companions, a good mass of them were young. If you read through, many of them accepted Islam when they were at a young age. Now we want to take that burning passion of Iman and consolidate that with sound guidance. Because obviously you find that young people have this real passion and zeal, but at times they don't have that sound guidance or that ilm or that knowledge to strengthen it with. So the following ayat, beginning from verse number 9 from Surat Al Kahf, you find talking about these young individuals, talking about the companions of the cave. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أم حسبت أن أصحاب الكهف والرقيم كانوا من آياتنا عجبا. Do you think that the companions of the cave والرقيم, we'll come to the meaning, what does الرقيم mean, كانوا من آياتنا عجبا, are from amongst our strange signs or amongst the strange affairs. Now the affair of the companions of the cave is indeed something strange, because it goes against the natural norm or pattern of life. However, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is not something strange. So the verse is talking about, do you perceive it as something strange of what happened to the young boys inside the cave? But for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's not something strange. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can change the natural way of life, the natural fitrah, and turn it into something else. That is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam Mujahid highlights, among our signs are things that are amazing, that are more amazing than this. So we have many more amazing things than this, than the companions of the cave. لَيْسُوا بِأَعْجَبِ آيَاتِنَا. It's not the most strangest of signs, the young boys being inside the cave. There's much far greater signs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has presented. Ibn Abbas said, what I have given to you of knowledge, the Sunnah and the book, is far better than the story of the people of Kahf and Ar-Raqim. That the Qur'an itself and the Sunnah itself entails far more strange signs or concepts inside there, or strengthening one's iman. Muhammad ibn Ishaq said, it means I have not shown my creatures a proof more amazing than the story of the people of the cave and Ar-Raqim, as collected by Imam Al-Tabari. Now Al-Kahf, the word Al-Kahf that comes here, refers to a cave in a mountain. That's the meaning of Al-Kahf. A similar word could be the word Ghar. Ghar is also quite similar to the word Kahf. As for the word Ar-Raqim, because here you find, if you look carefully, you find Anna Ashab al-Kahfi war-Raqimi. What does the word Ar-Raqim mean? Here you find many different opinions by the ulama. Ibn Abbas said it is a valley, or it is the name of the valley. So the cave's name is Kahf, and the valley of the cave is called Ar-Raqim. But some of the Salaf have labelled it. Mujahid said it refers to their buildings. As we come to the building that was built upon them, Imam Mujahid said that Ar-Raqim is the actual building. Ka'ab said it was the name of the town or the village. Another statement going back to Ka'ab, it's the name of the mountain. The mountain itself is called Ar-Raqim. Sa'id ibn Jubayr said, it is a table of stone on which they wrote the story and placed it on the entrance of the cave. So Sa'id ibn Jubayr said that the actual Raqim, they wrote the story and they placed it outside the cave. That's what the meaning of Ar-Raqim is. As for the location of the cave, you find some ulama go to the opinion that somewhere in Turkey, in Andalus in Spain, some say near Philistine in Palestine, the area of Amman, Jordan, and some more views have been taken to the concept of Amman. Some people have discovered some area there and they try to highlight this is the place of Ashabul Kahf in Urdun. Another meaning of Ar-Raqim you find is Li-Kitab or Bunyan, as we mentioned, the name of the Sa'id ibn Jubayr once again highlights is the name of the book or the name of the building. Another opinion is Ar-Raqim is the name of the dog, Al-Kalb. So do you think the story of the young boys, the companions of the cave, War-Raqim, and the dog is something strange? So that's another opinion, that the name of the dog is Ar-Raqim. Ibn Abbas highlights that Kullul Qur'an a'lamuhu. I know a large portion of the Qur'an, if not all of the Qur'an, except for 4. Amongst those 4 words, he doesn't know or locations or whatever the intended meaning is. Ghislin, Hananan, Al-Awa, and Ar-Raqim. So Ibn Abbas says, I don't know what Ar-Raqim means. What is the meaning of Ar-Raqim? Then we come to what happened to these young individuals. إذ أول فتية إلى الكهف فقالوا ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا. So you find that these young men, they fled from their people for the sake of their religion, fearing persecution. So because they feared persecution, they fled and they went to the cave. فقالوا ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة. O our Lord, bestow upon us your mercy. وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا, and facilitate our affair for us. Now this running away from persecution, you find some points of wisdom that you find some ulama, or point of wisdom some ulama have highlighted, is look at the young people today. Young people in general are fleeing for or towards haram, not fleeing away from haram. Look at these young individuals, they're running away from the persecution and the harm in the society and running away towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some of the ulama tafsir highlight كانوا أبناء الملوك. These young boys were children or sons of the leaders, of the kings at that time. So just not any normal type of shabab, they were in a sound or a strong position. Or كانوا أهل شرفهم, or were amongst the family, the children of the most noble people of that area. So another extraction that we learn, that even amongst the rich or mala'ul qawm, the elite individuals, you can find that Islam could stem from them, that Islam could return back to them, and it would be more powerful than at times the masakeen, the poor individuals who submit themselves to Islam. So then they took the cave as a retreat. And the cave, if you find on many occasions, you find in the Sunnah and in the Qur'an, it plays a great significance in many of the Hadeeth. The famous Hadeeth is collected by Imam Bukhari and Muslim, when 3 men, when it was excessive rain, and they decided to enter into the cave, and then the great big boulder, the great big rock came and it sealed them, and they were trapped inside the cave. And so each one of them made his supplication, doing an action that they highlighted that they done sincerely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The first one, if we recall, whereby his parents, he would always offer them the milk, and one day he came back late, and then they fell asleep, and he stood there waiting until they awoke, and then he gave them the milk. Then he went back and gave it to his family, and then he rested, and he said, Ya Allah, I done that only seeking your pleasure all alone. The second one being that the person he loved, bintu ammi, he loved the daughter of his uncle, his first cousin, and he wanted to commit an evil action with her, and she refused until one day she needed some wealth from him. And then he said, I will give you the wealth, providing that you let me commit this evil action. And then when he's about to commit this evil action, that she tells him to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then he retracts himself, and he says, Ya Allah, there was no one between us in doing this action, but the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came upon me, and so then the boulder moved slightly more. Then the third individual was the worker who came, and the man didn't pay him his wealth. He left, and his wealth accumulated more and more, till eventually it became a mass amount. And the man came back and he asked for his due right, and he said, whatever you find is all yours. And the man said, look, are you trying to mock me and trying to belittle me? He said, no, it's all yours. This is all your wealth that's generated more and more. And the man took all of his wealth. He said, Ya Allah, you know that I've done that only seeking your pleasure alone. And the rock moved, and all 3 of them came out. Second occasion that you find the time of the Prophet Muhammad, whereby the use of the cave, Abu Bakr and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you look in Surah Al Tawbah, the 9th chapter, verse number 40, إِذْ هُمَا فِي الْغَارِ إِذْ يَقُولُ لِصَاحِبِهِ لَا تَحْزَنْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَنَا. If you find that both of them are inside the cave, and he says to his companion, لَا تَحْزَنْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَنَا, don't fear, don't grieve, indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us. This verse inside Surah Al Tawbah, the 9th chapter, verse number 40, is a refutation of the Shia as well. Because obviously we posed them who was inside the cave with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because we know that amongst Khulatu Shia, the extreme Shia at the moment, which we classify as a Rawafid, the Rafidah, is part of their belief to make takfir upon Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhuma. So this verse is quite clear linguistically and technically, and according to points of tafsir as well, that it refers to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr together being inside the cave. إِذْ هُمَا, and when both of them, fil ghar, they're both inside the cave, and he says to his companion, don't fear, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us. Then once inside the cave, you find they make this supplication, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا مِن لَدُنْكَ رَحْمَةً وَهَيِّئْ لَنَا مِنْ أَمْرِنَا رَشَدًا. Give us your mercy and conceal us from our people. Meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we've come into this location, you're the only one subhanahu wa ta'ala that can protect us from the people and direct our matter well, that is, grant us a good end. So we're going through this calamity, there's only one way to turn, is to turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As you find in the Qur'an, فَفِرُّوا إِلَى اللَّهِ, that flee back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When calamities come, there's nowhere to flee, except for to flee back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because many people think that when hardship comes that we should flee away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rather, one should be fleeing more and more closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thus you find this hadith collected in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad, وَمَا قَضَيْتَ لَنَا مِنْ قَضَاءٍ فَاجْعَلْ عَاقِبَتَهُ رَشَدًا. Whatever you've decreed upon us, then make the end of it a form of guidance and a form of goodness for us. So whatever the calamity that could be, whatever is decreed upon the individual. Then you find verse number 11, فَضَرَبْنَا عَلَى آذَانِهِمْ فِي الْكَهْفِ سِنِينَ عَدَدًا. Then we covered up, فَضَرَبْنَا عَلَى آذَانِهِمْ, we covered up the hearing, the faculty of hearing. Now here you find many times the Arabic language is a deep language, it's a rich language. It gives you these parables, it gives you these similes, these similarities, And obviously here we covered the hearing means that we made them fall asleep. فَضَرَبْنَا عَلَىٰ آذَانِهِمْ. The faculty of hearing was taken away, meaning that they were dropped into a deep sleep. فِي الْكَهْفِ سِنِينَ عَدَدًا, which caused them to sleep for many years. ثُمَّ بَعَثْنَاهُمْ لِنَعْلَمَ أَيُّ الْحِزْبَيْنِ أَحْصَىٰ لِمَا لَبِثُوا أَمَدًا. Then we raised them up that we might test which of the two parties was best at calculating the time period they tarried, they stayed inside the cave. So remember, we mentioned the whole of this story is just a concept of Tawheed. Obviously, we studied academically what does Tawheed mean. Here you're going to find the whole symbol of Tawheed throughout the journey of these young individuals, and as we mentioned throughout this surah. Then comes in verse number 13, the main part of the story. نَحْنُ نَقُصُّ عَلَيْكَ نَبَأَهُمْ بِالْحَقِّ. Indeed, we're going to narrate to you this story in truthfulness, in accuracy. إِنَّهُمْ فِتْيَةٌ آمَنُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ وَزِدْنَاهُمْ هُدًى. Indeed, they were young men who believed in their Lord, وَزِدْنَاهُمْ هُدًى, and we increased them in guidance. Now their story was recorded in the previous books. And the evidence for that is what we began with when the two companions, or the two companions of the Quraysh, went to Medina to ask the rabbis, when they said to him, ask the Prophet Muhammad salluhu an thalatha, ask him about these three things. I remember one of the questions was, ask about the young boys that happened previously. So here you find that this story of these individuals has been documented by the previous scriptures. It did exist. We were well versed who these young individuals, these young boys were. Now what led them to flee away from their people, as some of the works of Tafsir have highlighted, is on a yearly basis they will have this annual festival, this festival of kufr and shirk that you find, and it was imposed upon them that they had to attend. And this ruling was placed by some of the ulama have collected, or mu'arrikhun, historians, by Malik Daqyus. Malik Daqyus, Latin is Decanus, Decianus. And so when they went there, they began to withdraw one by one. So they went, and then they began to just, all of them one by one, managed to leave this area. Obviously these are just some of the views of works of tafsir. I mean, a person could accept it, a person could reject it, but it just gives you the whole understanding of the story. Because the natural fitrah pushed them away, created this repulsion, or created this hatred to be in the place of kufr and shirk. And that's the normal fitrah. Fitrat Allahi fatura an-nasa alayha. That should be the natural fitrah of the human being, that when they see something repulsive, something evil, they don't feel comfortable inside that environment, and they need to leave. So these individuals had that yearning, that feeling, and then they left. Thus their Lord increased them in guidance. وَزِدْنَاهُمْ هُدًى. And then we increased them in guidance. Some of the ulama said that huda bima'na ikhlasan. We increased them in sincerity. So they were sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed even more sincerity within their hearts. Thus you find many ayat inside the Qur'an talking about this concept of increasing believers with guidance. وَالَّذِينَ اهْتَدَوْا زَادَهُمْ هُدًى وَآتَاهُمْ تَقْوَاهُم. Those people, those individuals who وَالَّذِينَ اهْتَدَوْا, who seek the guidance, زَادَهُمْ هُدًى, we increase them in guidance. وَآتَاهُمْ تَقْوَاهُم, then we give them, bestow upon them taqwa, the consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا فَزَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا وَهُمْ يَسْتَبْشِرُونَ. As for those people who believe, then we increase them in iman, وَهُمْ يَسْتَبْشِرُونَ, and then they rejoice. So this person seeks iman, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases that iman, till eventually the person begins to rejoice in that iman. In Surah Al Tawbah, the 9th chapter, verse number 124. لِيَزْدَادُوا إِيمَانًا مَعَ إِيمَانِهِمْ, that they may increase their iman with even more iman. So likewise you find in the end of Surat Al Ankabut, وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلُنَا. Whoever strives in our paths, then we will show them our paths. So the whole concept here, that these individuals, they were striving, they strove, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increased guidance upon these individuals and made them firm. As you find another verse in the Qur'an, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِن تَنْصُرُوا اللَّهَ يَنْصُرْكُمْ وَيُثَبِّتْ أَقْدَامَكُمْ. or you believe if you give victory or give aid to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will aid you. وَيُثَبِّتْ أَقْدَامَكُمْ, and He will make firm your standing or your feet on the ground. And thus you find what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions about these individuals in verse number 14, وَرَبَطْنَا عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ, and then we did strengthen their hearts. Because literally, Rabt means to tie together. That we did tighten their hearts in the sense of strengthening their iman. إِذْ قَامُوا فَقَالُوا رَبُّنَا رَبُّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, when they stood up and they said to these people, indeed our Lord is the Lord of the heavens and the earth. لَن نَدْعُوَ مِن دُونِهِ إِلَهًا, we're not going to call upon any other ilah, deity. لَقَدْ قُلْنَا إِذًا شَطَطًا, and if we did utter anything against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this would be something enormous, a concept of great disbelief. And shatata carries the meaning of kadhiba, a great lie, a blasphemy against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you find the concept of saying kadhiba, uttering lies to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the way of the foolish. As you find in the Qur'an, if you look at Surat Al Jinn, وَأَنَّهُ كَانَ يَقُولُ سَفِيهُنَا عَلَى اللَّهِ شَطَطًا, only the foolish ones are those who attribute lies to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise in the second juz you find Surah Al-Baqarah, you find سَيَقُولُ السُّفَهَاءُ مِنَ النَّاسِ, the foolish ones will talk about why have these people turned away from the direction of the Kaaba. So for many people, deen just becomes play. For certain individuals, whenever you highlight something about the deen, they always criticize it or belittle the deen, and this is the way of the sufaha, the foolish individuals. They don't seem to comprehend the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the strengthening of their hearts and these individuals being brought together is what brings the prophets together and what brings us together, this concept of iman. And thus you find this famous hadith collected in the Sahih of Imam Muslim, الأرواح جنود مجندة فما تعارف منها ائتلفا وما تناكر منها اختلفا. Souls are like the recruited soldiers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whichever amongst them they get to know one another, ائتلفا, then you find a strong bonding between these individuals on the basis of iman. وما تناكر, and wherever there's differences or some form of possible misunderstanding and hatred, اختلفا, then you find difference. So if the basis is iman, then you find that hearts will come together automatically themselves. If people have the same vision of the same aqa'id, the same belief and the same love of the sunnah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put things together. Because most people, they think it's just gather the masses and we'll all be one understanding. Look, it's not all about just gathering the masses. It's all about people working towards the same vision, the same belief, the same sunnah, same concept, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will place His blessings upon that. Thus you find even inside the Qur'an, وَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِهِمْ, He is the one that made love and respect and dignity and placed that understanding inside their hearts. لَوْ أَنفَقْتَ مَا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا, if you used to spend everything in the heavens or everything upon the earth to bring these people together, مَا أَلَّفْتَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِهِمْ, you would not bring their hearts together. So mass gatherings, wealth, possessions, whatever it may be, doesn't bring any human beings together. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ أَلَّفَ بَيْنَهُمْ إِنَّهُ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. But indeed it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that brought their hearts together. He is the Almighty, the All-Wise. So many of us fail to understand that concept, that we think that it's other concepts that will bring people together. Person should carry on with the task of preaching the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring humanity back to one basic understanding. And thus you find that these individuals, they became brothers in faith and they adopted a particular location and they began to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they came together, is what brought them all together, and they began to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as we mentioned, that some of the ulama said that they said these words in front of the king. So they said this in front of him, فَقَالُوا رَبُّنَا رَبُّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, our Lord is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator of the heavens and the earth. هؤلاء قومون اتخذوا من دونه آلهة لولا يأتون عليهم بسلطان بين فمن أظلم ممن افترى على الله كذبا. So they highlighted our people, they are the ones that began to worship others besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why did they not bring for them a clear authority? Who does more than wrong than invents a lie against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So they're telling them, bring your evidences that there are other deities besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the king gave them some time to reflect, to return back, gave them the opportunity. So he didn't punish them straight away. So he thought maybe they're young individuals, give them some time to reflect and to think, and then they'll return back to our understanding of the deen. However, you find that the Qur'an mentions وَإِذِ اعْتَزَلْتُمُوهُمْ وَمَا يَعْبُدُونَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ فَأْوُوا إِلَى الْكَهْفِ يَنْشُرْ لَكُمْ رَبُّكُمْ مِنْ رَحْمَتِهِ وَيُهَيِّئْ لَكُمْ مِنْ أَمْرِكُمْ مِرْفَقًا. When you withdrew from them and that which they worshipped except Allah, then seek refuge in the cave, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make easy for you your affair. So rather than go back and return back to the deen, they thought the only thing that we can do is we could be punished by this king. The best thing to do is to leave, make hijrah, to go away from this individual and from these people. And then you find that they entered into the cave. When they entered into the cave, you find, and they rested inside the cave, وَتَرَى الشَّمْسَ إِذَا طَلَعَتْ تَزَاوَرُ عَنْ كَأْفِهِمْ ذَاتَ الْيَمِينِ وَإِذَا خَرَبَتْ تَقْرِضُهُمْ ذَاتَ الشِّمَالِ وَهُمْ فِي فَجْوَةٍ مِّنْ ذَلِكَ مِنْ آيَاتِ اللَّهِ مَنْ يَهْدِ اللَّهُ فَهُوَ الْمُهْتَدِي وَمَنْ يُضْلِلْ فَلَنْ تَجِدَ لَهُ وَلِيًّا مُرْشِدًا. Verse number 17. You find that the sun, when it rose, تَزَاوَرُوا عَنْ كَأْفِهِمْ, then it would decline, according to the other side. وَإِذَا غَرَبَتْ تَقْرِضُهُمْ ذَاتَ الشِّمَالِ, then it would set, and they would be turning away towards the other side. Meaning that the sun did not burn them, but rather kept them alive. Because if the sun was to shine directly upon them, then obviously it would be a form of destruction upon these individuals. Once again, some of the ulama and tafsir, they talk about the entrance to the cave faced north. So it would shine on them, and then it would leave them. Obviously, you can go and read further in this technical study of the way the sun was rising, the way it was going down. As for the location of the cave, where was the location of the cave? However, some of the ulama tafsir, they just highlighted this famous hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam: "ما تركت شيئا يقربكم إلى الجنة ويباعدكم من النار إلا وقد أعلمتكم به." There's not anything which will bring you closer to paradise and take you further away from the hellfire except I have told you about it. So the location of the cave isn't a big issue for the Muslim. Where is the exact type of cave, etc., is not something beneficial. Because if it's something that brings you closer to paradise, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would have highlighted this to the believers. Then you find وَتَحْسَبُهُمْ أَيْقَاظًا وَهُمْ رُقُودٌ. You think that they are awake, وَهُمْ رُقُودٌ, but they are in a deep sleep. وَنُقَلِّبُهُمْ ذَاتَ الْيَمِينِ وَذَاتَ الشِّمَالِ, and we turn them over to the right and we turn them over to the left. وَكَلْبُهُمْ بَاسِطٌ ذِرَاعِهِ بِالْوَصِيدِ, and their dog is lying outside of the cave stretching out his paws or his legs. لَوْ اطَّلَعْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ لَوَلَّيْتَ مِنْهُمْ فِرَارًا وَلَمُلِئْتَ مِنْهُمْ رُعْبًا. And if you used to see them, and you would have been full of fear when you visualize such a sight. These young boys is lying there asleep inside the cave and the dog lying outside. It would have been something fearful if you visualize this sign. Now you find once again, ulama tafsir, they highlight that their eyelids did not close, lest disintegration took hold of them. Better for the sake of preservation. So obviously that's why a person would feel scared when they saw these young boys, that their eyelids were open, but they were in a deep sleep. تَحْسَبُهُمْ أَيْقَاظًا وَهُمْ رُقُودٌ. You think they're awake, but they are in a deep sleep. Other ulama talk about the way a wolf sleeps, that it opens one eye and it closes the other eye, then it switches over. So these young boys were sleeping in that manner as well, that they would continuously switch their eyes. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would turn them over every so often. Some of the ulama of tafsir, they highlight that كَانُوا يُقَلِّبُهُمْ فِي كُلِّ عَامٍ مَرَّةً, that every year they would turn over once. فِي كُلِّ عَامٍ مَرَّتَيْنِ, every year twice. The reason for that the earth will not eat away their flesh. Because obviously the task of the earth is to take whatever is upon it, to take it down into the ground. So if there's movement, it will not disintegrate. So that's one of the wisdoms why they would turn around from the right and turn to the left, from the left turn over to the right. As for the dog, Ismul Kalb, we mentioned one opinion was Ar-Raqib. Once again, all this excessive knowledge that you find, which the ulama talk about Israeliyat, the Israelite traditions. talking about the name of the dog, the breed of the dog, the color of the dog, etc. But just to lighten the atmosphere, we'll mention what some of them have written. Doesn't mean that we believe in this or we're promoting these views, but just whilst going through it, we came across, they said the dog's name was Qitumur or Qitumir. Some of them even claimed that it wasn't a dog, it was a lion that was with them. The pet was a lion. The color of it was ahmar, and it was red, or it was a yellow color dog that they had with them. But all this Israeliyat, as we mentioned, there's no real benefit in knowing the breed of the dog, the color of the dog. But sometimes when you're reading it, it does, like I mentioned, it does alleviate the reading, because sometimes it tends to be too much of a technical, and sometimes at least you can sit there and you can laugh when you read something like that. As long as you don't take that knowledge and promote that knowledge amongst any individuals. Then you find that the dog was outside. Once again, look at the hikmah, look how the ulama dissect this knowledge. They said because the angels do not enter a house where there's a dog. So even that stage, even though it was a cave, you still find the dog was lying outside. Another benefit you find is that if a dog accompanying good people gains fame and stature in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then think about a human being with the salihin, with the righteous people. Because literally what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing is praising this dog. Because a mention of the dog is a form of praise. And obviously, linguistically, there's no such value to the dog, but that's the lesson that we can learn. That the dog being with these young boys gets praised or gets mentioned inside the Qur'an. So imagine if as human beings that we try to stay with the righteous people, it would be the benefit, yarhamukallah. وَكَذَلِكَ بَعَثْنَاهُمْ لِيَتَسَاءَلُوا بَيْنَهُمْ قَالَ قَائِلٌ مِّنْهُمْ كَمْ لَبِثْتُمْ قَالُوا لَبِثْنَا يَوْمًا أَوْ بَعْضَ يَوْمٍ قَالُوا رَبُّكُمْ أَعْلَمُ بِمَا لَبِثْتُمْ فَابْعَثُوا أَحَدَكُمْ بِوَرَقِكُمْ هَذِهِ إِلَى الْمَدِينَةِ فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَيُّهَا أَزْكَى طَعَامًا فَلْيَأْتِكُمْ بِرِزْقٍ مِّنْهُ وَلْيَتَلَطَّفْ وَلَا يُشْعِرَنَّ بِكُمْ أَحَدًا. And then you find that when they awoke and they began to discuss amongst each other, how long have we been sleeping for? Has it been a day, part of a day, half a day? قَالُوا رَبُّكُمْ أَعْلَمُ بِمَا لَبِثْتُمْ. They said, our Lord knows how long we've been residing in this area. So one of them says, فَبَعَثُوا أَحَدَكُمْ بِوَرَقِكُمْ هَذِهِ. That one of you take this money, that's what meaning waraqa here is, take this money, take this coin, and go to the city. And go and see, فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَيُّهَا أَزْكَى طَعَامًا. What is the pure, good food? Not like many of us, junk food. And let him come with a good provision. And make sure that nobody spots you whilst you're making this journey there. وَلْيَتَلَطَّفْ وَلَا يُشْعِرَنَّ بِكُمْ أَحَدًا. And let no one perceive you entering into the city and leaving the city and gaining some food for us. And let him be careful and let no man know any about you. So they entered in the morning and they woke up at the end of the day. That's what some of the ulama talked about. They entered in the morning and they woke up at the end of the day. Now what was more important for these individuals after ibadah was their need for food and drink. Because to make good ibadah, you need to have good food. Because that's how you to sustain yourself to perform ibadah and perform good actions. When people think that to eat and drink, there's no need to eat and drink and just perform ibadah, you're only harming yourself. La darar wa la dirar. There's no harm upon oneself and causing harm upon other individuals. Especially to take that which will benefit them and strengthen them in their form of ibadah. And thus you find that this is the way of the anbiya. The Qur'an talks about Ya ayyuha rusulu kulu min at-tayyibati wa'malu salihah. O messengers, eat from the good foods and then wa'malu salihah, and then do righteous actions. That's the way of the messengers. Eat good food, wholesome, pure, healthy food, wa'malu salihah, and carry out righteous actions. And be cautious of what you buy and be cautious on your way there and back when you return. Because إِنَّهُمْ إِن يَظْهَرُوا عَلَيْكُمْ يَرْجُمُوكُمْ. If these people, they discover you or get to know you, يَرْجُمُوكُمْ, they will stone you. أَوْ يُعِيدُوكُمْ فِي مِلَّتِهِمْ وَلَن تُفْلِحُوا إِذًا أَبَدًا. Or they'll return you back to their way of life and you will never ever be successful. That they may force you even to commit apostasy, and if you apostate, there will be no benefit in this world, and in the hereafter as well, there will be no benefit for that individual. Rather, the individual will be exposed. both in the dunya and in the akhirah as well. And thus comes the opposite as well, that likewise good people need to be exposed in the world as well. So many times people think that how comes always the bad people get exposed. There will be times that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will expose the good people as well. And this is a prime example of these young boys, because if you look at the following verse, وَكَذَلِكَ أَعْثَرْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ لِيَعْلَمُوا أَنَّ وَعْدَ اللَّهِ حَقٌّ. And we made the case to be known and the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is true. وَأَنَّ السَّاعَةَ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهَا. And the hour, or the coming of the hour, there is no doubt about it. إِذْ يَتَنَازَعُونَ بَيْنَهُمْ أَمْرَهُمْ. And they begin to dispute about the affair of these individuals. فَقَالُوا بْنُوا عَلَيْهِمْ بُنْيَانًا. Build a building over them. رَبُّهُمْ أَعْلَمُ بِهِمْ قَالَ الَّذِينَ غَلَبُوا عَلَى أَمْرِهِمْ لَنَتَّخِذَنَّ عَلَيْهِمْ مَسْجِدًا. That indeed, those who had more control, they said, we are going to place a building, a masjid over them. A place of remembrance for these individuals. So later, these young boys became well known. And their story was known, but they were not discovered at that time. At a later stage, the praise was given to these individuals. And you find at the time of the resurrection, the people were disputing about how one will be resurrected. That's what the people were arguing about at that stage as well. Is the individual going to be resurrected by just their ruh, by their soul? Or would it be with the ruh wal jasad jami'an? Would it be with the soul and the body together? And thus you find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to remove away that dispute that was taking place, He resurrected, brought forth these young boys once again in front of them. So remember, it's possible that centuries have passed since they've slept, as we'll come to the time span, and now they're living in a time of Malik Daqyus. So they were living in the time of Malik Daqyus, and now then they begin to live in the time of a Muslim king. So they died, or they went to sleep at the time, or lived in the time period of the non-Muslim king, and then they awoke at the time when a Muslim ruler was there in place. And thus you find, if you continue reading the story about the coin, that take one of you this coin and go to the city place, you find that when they took the coin, that young man went to the marketplace to buy something, and then they saw this coin, the size of the coin seemed like a treasure. And the man said, look, this is from a long time ago, this coin is. Where did you get this coin from? So they thought maybe he may have stolen it, may have discovered some treasure. He said, this is the money of our time. And on there you find that some of the ulama, they talk about the face of the king, or the stamp of the king was placed there. And then it was taken to the actual king himself, the current king, and he posed him and asked him some questions, and then they came to come and look at the location of the boys. So now you find that the time of kufr, and now comes the time of Islam. But this individual did not get to see the boys. As the ulama of tafsir, they highlight, because when the first one entered, and they were all lifted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, taken away from that location. And the seal and the door of the cave was sealed, and leave them as they are. So basically something came and closed the location of these young boys, and then it was said, build a place of worship over them, a place of remembrance of these young boys. And this shows the people of power and influence, that many times they are the individuals who go around building graves and shrines of people. And they could be doing a lot more other beneficial things for the Muslim Ummah, and getting rid of this evil practice that you find when dead individuals, when they have passed away. Then comes verse number 22. How many boys were there in the cave? سيقولون ثلاثة رابعهم كلبهم ويقولون خمسة سادسهم كلبهم رجما بالغيب. They say that there was 3 of them, and the 4th one was a dog. They say there was 5 of them, and the 6th one was a dog. Or رجما بالغيب. These are just guesses at the unseen, or regarding the unseen. ويقولون سبعة وثامنهم كلبهم. They say there was 7, and the 8th one was a dog. قل ربي أعلم بعدتهم. Say, indeed my Lord knows accurately about their number. ما يعلمهم إلا قليل. And only a few people know about this. فلا تماري فيهم إلا مراء ظاهرا ولا تستفتي فيهم منهم أحدا. So debate not except with the clear proof, and consult not any of the individuals. So here you find the 3 views about the number of these individuals. The first view, that there was 3 of them, and the 4th was the dog, which the highlight is the view of the Jews. The 5th, there was 5 of them, and the 6th one was a dog, is the view of the Christians. And both are described as guessing at the unseen. And then you find the final view, there were 7 of them, and the 8th one was a dog, and there's no comment. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refutes the first 2 concepts, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remains silent about the 3rd view, and thus you find many ulama take the opinion that the correct view is that there were 7 of them, and then the 8th one was the dog, the magnificent 7. Only a few understood and have the correct knowledge, مَا يَعْلَمُهُمْ إِلَّا قَلِيلٌ, and only a few people have the knowledge about this. That's why Ibn Abbas said, أَنَا مِنَ الْقَلِيلِ كَانُوا سَبْعًا, I'm amongst those few individuals who have the knowledge of this, and I'm letting you know that there was only 7 of them. However, we find there's no need to debate and take the benefit and the lesson of this story or the surah. There's no need to continuously debate about such issues as we mentioned about the dog, etc. The following ayat 23 and 24, which we began with previously, وَلَا تَقُولَنَّ لِشَيْءٍ إِنِّي فَاعِلٌ ذَلِكَ غَدًا إِلَّا إِن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ وَاذْكُرْ رَبَّكَ إِذَا نَسِيتَ وَقُلْ عَسَىٰ أَن يَهْدِيَنِي رَبِّي لِأَقْرَبَ مِنْ هَذَا رَشَدًا. And do not say, I'm going to do any action tomorrow, I'm going to do any action the following day, except for to say, inshaAllah. And indeed, my Lord is the one that will guide me to a nearer way of truth than this. And we already talked about the reason why this verse was sent down and why the surah was sent down, and the etiquette of the surah, talking about whereby the Prophet Muhammad, and he did not mention inshallah about answering to these questions to them. Now the ulama also bring with this verse another famous narration of Bukhari and Muslim, that Sulaiman alayhi salam, he said, لَأَطُوفَنَّ اللَّيْلَةَ عَلَى 70 إِمْرَأَةً, I will visit at night 70, my 70 wives. Another narration, 90 or 100. تَلِدُ كُلُّ إِمْرَأَةٍ مِّنْهُنَّ غُلَامًا يُقَاتِلُ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, and each one of them will give birth to a child or to a boy who will fight in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَلَمْ تَلِدْ مِنْهُنَّ إِلَّا مَرْأَةٌ وَاحِدَةٌ نِصْفَ إِنسان. None of them gave birth to a child except for one, and even that one who gave birth to half a human being. So he visited either narrations 100 women or 90 or 70. The most he was requesting was 100 children, or at least the least would be 70, and all he received was half a child. And then you find the Prophet Muhammad said, if he had said inshallah kana darakan li hajatihi, if he had said inshallah, he would have attained what he wanted. So the hadith is in Bukhari and Muslim. Some ulama go to the opinion that even if you remember after 6 months or 1 year, you should still say inshallah. So even after 6 months you forgot to say inshallah, still say inshallah. So subhanallah is how some of the ulama have gone to such a degree. Then you find the final discussion talks about the length of them staying inside the cave. وَلَبِثُوا فِي كَهْفِهِمْ 300 سِنِينَ وَازْدَادُوا تِسْعًا. They remained inside the cave for 300 years and increased upon that 9. قُلِ اللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ بِمَا لَبِثُوا لَهُ غَيْبُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ أَبْصِرْ بِهِ وَأَسْمِعْ مَا لَهُ مِنْ دُونِهِ مِنْ وَلِيٍّ وَلَا يُشْرِكُ فِي حُكْمِهِ أَحَدًا. Say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that knows بِمَا لَبِثُوا, the time span that they remained inside the cave. لَهُ غَيْبُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, to him belongs the knowledge of the unseen in the heavens and the earth, how clearly he hears and sees. So then you find both opinions here are mentioned. 300 years is equivalent to the solar years. 300 years plus 9 is equivalent to the lunar years. So that's a Shaykh Khafi, the extraction that some of the ulama made. And here you find both counting of years are mentioned, whether it be the solar years you follow or the concept of lunar years. And Imam Tabari just highlights it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just states the facts. We don't need to delve into the science about the counting of the years, etc. So in conclusion, you find that the lessons that we learn, or the points, important points of these ayat talking about companions of the cave, is these people, they shun shirk in the beginning and in the end. The young boys, right from the beginning to the end, they disassociated themselves from the committing of any shirk. وَلَا يُشْرِكْ فِي حُكْمِهِ أَحَدًا, and none should associate any partners in the rule of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The concept of remaining steadfast is the second lesson that we learn about these young individuals. Thirdly, you find to put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Third, you find Allah will increase the individual with iman and guidance. You take those steps towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will increase you in iman and guidance. Fifth, we find Allah puts love and closeness in the hearts. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that places this love and this affection, love for the righteous individuals, love for the ulama. Some people you haven't seen, you've only heard about them, you read about their writings. Sometimes, alhamdulillah, when I'm reading something that's written maybe centuries ago, you're reading some of the works and you feel as if you are in that time with the writer who's writing that work there. You feel great love and affection for that writing and for that individual, what they've written at that stage. Then you find trivial questioning. That always you find even amongst Muslims, you always find going for the trivial issues and not going for the core sciences and those things that will benefit the individual. But they like to turn it around to us and they like to say that your da'wah is only talking about the core, they're talking about the peel. You don't work on the core issue. Many ulama have given a rebuttal about this. The skin of an apple is a reflection of the inner core of the apple. So if the external is corrupt, then in general, the internal will be corrupt as well. But that's what they try to hide behind. They try to say that you only focus on the external part of the sunnah, the external things. You don't work on the internal things. There's only a sickness in the heart that stops you from externally conducting the sunnah in your life. Unless there's some genuine excuse that we mentioned on many occasions, there's some hardship, some difficulty, whatever there may be. But for people now, more and more you find people are coming out in the open, as we mentioned time and time again, concept of my hijab is inside my heart. God knows what's inside my heart. Allah knows what's inside my heart. Of course Allah knows, subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what's inside your heart, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that trained the hearts and told the hearts that you should manifest your iman and carry out the teachings of Islam. So you find that this is the concept that many people of trivial questioning, or they begin to ask about what they call the nitty-gritty things. And this has been forbidden. You find, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَسْأَلُوا عَنْ أَشْيَاءَ إِن تُبْدَ لَكُمْ تَسُؤْكُمْ. Don't ask excessive questioning. That when there's answers given to you, تَسُؤْكُمْ, it could harm you. So certain things have been made easy in Islam. Take the easy option. Never take the difficult option. That's from the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad. If two choices were given to him, both of them are halal, he would take the easy option. Why should we then take the more difficult option? Because harshness and hardness will only break the individual. You will not be able to continue that journey in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then we find another benefit, pure substance, pure food. Good food, wholesome food is the way of the mu'min. Then you find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will honor the righteous. You don't need graves, you don't need symbols, you don't need shrines, you don't need locations. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself subhanahu wa ta'ala will honor the righteous individuals. And then we find to say insha'Allah in every single action that we do, and then the length and stay upon this dunya is not very long. So even though these young individuals they were awake and they slept all the way until for 300 and 309 years, but really it's not a major thing the number, because verily this life is nothing but a very short life. And thus you find kalamhil basar, like the twinkling of an eye is what you find that this world is. They will take some part about Musa and Khidr alayhi salam, and you find that once again that as we've been talking about the concept that the Qur'an is there to remove harshness, to take over the heart, to win over the heart. And thus you find that many individuals more and more they talk about the da'wah of the sunnah being full of harshness. And they say that your ilm, your knowledge is ilmul jaf, your knowledge is only dry science. That's why you find many people they turn towards the Sufi. And the story you see how these people make ta'wil and begin to follow and endorse the way of the Sufiya. They say you don't have tazkiyah within you. It's always your da'wah is only rebuttals and views and analysis and refutations. That's all that your da'wah is. That's incorrect. Just because some people have made that part of their life. Because some people, that's all that they know, how to refute people. That's not the way of Ahlul Sunnah. The way of Ahlul Sunnah is deep spirituality. That's what real Ahlul Sunnah is. Obviously there's a time that we will refute people, you will give a rebuttal, you will decline certain things. But if the whole of your message just becomes, that's all that you focus upon, then you've misunderstood the concept of Ahlul Sunnah. Because you find that this continuous refutation it develops a harshness of the heart as well. And the Qur'an blames the hearts becoming harsh, becoming difficult. As you find in the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, ثُمَّ قَصَتْ قُلُوبُكُم مِّن بَعْدِ ذَلِكَ فَهِيَ كَالْحِجَارَةِ. Indeed, after that, the hearts became harsh like a rock, like a stone. أَوْ أَشَدُّ قَسْوَةً, or even more harsher than a rock. Why? وَإِنَّ مِنَ الْحِجَارَةِ لَمَا يَتَفَجَّرُ مِنْهُ الْأَنْهَارِ. Indeed, from the stone or from the rocks, you do find that water will spill out of them. وَإِنَّ مِنْهَا لَمَا يَشَقَّقُ فَيَخْرُجُ مِنْهُ الْمَاءِ. And some of them will split open and water will come out of them. وَإِنَّ مِنْهَا لَمَا يَحْبِطُ مِنْ خَشْيَةِ اللَّهِ. And some of them will fall down in the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a stone. That's a rock. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises it, saying that it will fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So imagine the heart of the human being which doesn't submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And likewise you find in the Qur'an, أَلَمْ يَأْنِ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَن تَخْشَأَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. Has not the time come for the believers that their heart should soften towards the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَا نَزَلَ مِنَ الْحَقِّ وَلَا يَكُونُ كَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ مِنْ قَبْلِ فَطَالَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْأَمَدُ فَقَسَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ وَكَثِيرٌ مِّنْهُمْ فَاسِقُونَ. And don't let time come over you that your hearts become harsh and hard. فَقَسَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ, just like the people before. وَكَثِيرٌ مِّنْهُمْ فَاسِقُونَ. And most of those individuals are the rebellious individuals. So this concept of khushuna or ghilza, any harshness and rudeness that you find, that should be turned over to leen, wa rifq, and rahmah. That's the way of Ahlul Sunnah. That should be turned over to this. The opposite is a real da'wah. And thus you find this harshness is manifest upon us, unfortunately. We don't really see any humbleness, tawadu, softness, being merciful, being compassionate. And thus you find that more and more people who've lived a life of a materialistic life, and they want to, or even unfortunately, I use these words with great reservation, that even amongst some of the ulama, that the materialistic aspect of life becomes important for them. And obviously, it's not trying to belittle them. Obviously, there's many that are still full of spirituality, and not to say that wealth is wrong, because everybody needs wealth. But people looking for spirituality, they find it amongst others. Because alhamdulillah, many times I've been with certain individuals, who may be prominent, etc. And sometimes then you do begin to question that if our scholarly people are behaving in this manner, then of course the general public is going to behave in this manner. All types of needs of the world that you find. So spirituality, abstinence, zuhud, is amongst the essences of Ahlul Sunnah. And obviously we want to go and show that concept of tazkiyah that you find of Ahlul Sunnah. Whereby they talk about ilm al-zahir. They say you people only know the zahir, the external affairs. We know the batin, the internal. And this story that we're going to discuss, inshallah, you're going to find, if there is such a thing as ilm al-zahir and ilm al-batin anyway in the first place, you will find both of them put together. The external knowledge and the internal knowledge that you find in the story talking about Musa and Khidr that you can find in this concept inside Surat Al Kahf. Now you find that, as we mentioned, that unfortunately many of these individuals, they hijack this story. The false groups, they take this story of Khidr and they try to highlight this is the way on their own personal agenda. And as we'll talk about the way of the tasawwuf and Sufiya that you find, that they use this story, this prime story, to highlight their own concept and their own understanding. So we want to go back and go through this story and take out the benefit for us and revitalize the stance of Ahlul Sunnah. Because that's what many people they do. They take the same story and they make their own interpretation to fit into their own agenda, their own political agenda, or their own understanding. Now this story of Musa and Khidr runs from verse number 60 all the way up to verse number 82. So those are the main 22 verses we're going to be looking at, and looking at the classical Hadeeth which talk about Musa alayhi salam and his meeting with Khidr. And we just mentioned the beginning of the reason of this story, as you find in the narration of Imam Bukhari, that you find inna Musa qama khatiban min bani Israel. Fi Bani Israel. Musa alayhi salam stood up and he began to give the sermon or give the admonition to his people amongst them. فَسُئِلَ أَيُّ النَّاسِ أَعْلَمُ. He was asked, who is the most knowledgeable individual? قَالَ أَنَا. He said, I am. Now in face value, a person might think, how can that be possible? How can Musa alayhi salam be so flamboyant, so open, and say, Ana, I'm the most knowledgeable one? Here the ulama highlight, and he's a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's a messenger. He had every right to say those words, even though it wasn't words of arrogance, because obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given him revelation. So he was in the position that at that stage, he is the most knowledgeable individual. So his response wasn't one of arrogance, it was one of presenting his due right in front of these individuals, because he was a serving prophet at that time and revelation was given to him. But even then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to humble him. That even for you to just say this, we want to show you, Ya Musa alayhi salam, that there is somebody who's got a science or a knowledge which is running parallel to your science or a deep understanding as well. And how many of us, subhanallah, need to be humbled as well? That's what we learn. Look at the humility of Musa alayhi salam. He didn't say, Ana Nabi, or Ana Rasul. He didn't say, look, I'm a messenger, I'm a prophet. And Allah, you're sending me to somebody else who's not even a messenger. He humbles himself. And he wants to carry out that journey. في طلب العلم, and a journey of studying of knowledge. But he's a Rasul. Even though some of the ulama talk about that, why does he travel to Khidr? He travels there because the knowledge that he's going to learn is a secondary knowledge which will strengthen his primary knowledge. Because as a messenger, he's been given the primary knowledge. There's something that Khidr can give him, which would be another form of revelation. It's just a secondary science to strengthen him and to humble him in front of the people. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rebuked him because he did not refer the knowledge back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so said to him that go to find this individual at the junction of the two seas. There is a servant of ours who is more learned than you, and so you need to go and visit him and learn from him. So then we find that Musa alayhi salam, that he takes his journey showing no arrogance but total submission to go and learn from this individual. And that shows a lesson for all of us as well, inshallah, that wherever knowledge is, the person should go there to gain that knowledge. Knowledge is not reserved between certain individuals or certain group of individuals. That's why some of them, they talk about ulama, that if you want to know the mistakes of your teacher, or if you want to know a better teacher than your own teacher, then go and sit with a contemporary to the teacher. Because some people, unfortunately, more and more people, they try to reserve knowledge amongst their own group of individuals. Because the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is vast and thrown upon different individuals in different ways, that you could go to someone else and learn. You can learn adab, you can learn manhaj, you can learn hadith, you can learn tafsir, you can learn so many things. Learn to extract the benefits from individuals. And that's why you find in the hadith that the mu'min, the believer, is mafatihul khair, is the keys of goodness. Keys of goodness. That if you see somebody who has incorrect knowledge, incorrect understanding, but they have something which is strong with them, then you should try to build good ties with them and correct them on the understanding that they've gone wrong and the things that they're doing right, and strengthen them in that, rather than for us to push ourselves away from people and think that we can develop something on our own. Okay, so we find that he says that, oh my Lord, how can I meet him? So he said that take a fish and put it in a vessel, put it in a basket, in a miktal. Put the fish, a salted fish inside the basket, and wherever the fish jumps out, you will find the servant there. Now here you find some of the ulama talk about the benefits of fish. Lahman tariya. That's how the Qur'an describes That's why, wallahi, some books you read, once you get the Arabic language, you read some of the works. I mean, even some of them ulama said there's deviant, like Imam Razi. What's Imam Razi's famous work? Fathul Kabir, is it? Mafatih al-Ghaib, something or such. I forgot the name of his. Tafsir al-Kabir, that's right. Tafsir al-Kabir of Imam Razi. Some ulama said that فيه كل شيء إلا tafsir. In it is everything except for tafsir. But that's wrong though. Because I've read certain parts of Imam Razi, and many ulama said that's just a mubalagha, that's excessive speech. Because Imam Razi does talk about a lot of other things, but some extractions that he makes inside, they are beautiful. You can read them. Even people who classify the Mu'tazila, al-Kashaf of Zamakhshari, great ulama will quote him, because in terms of balagha, he's deep. In terms of his poetry and his writing and his dissecting of the words, you find it in Zamakhshari. So obviously general ulama said don't read their works, but yet they quote them. Why? Because they know there's some benefit inside there. Even though his aqidah, he was a Mu'tazili in his aqaid. That's why you read the works of Imam Alusi and other ulama. Even the Tafsir ibn Katheer is the most authentic. But the problem with, if there is such a thing as a problem with the Tafsir ibn Katheer, is his language is very deep at times. The Arabic he uses, and you can't seem to find that flow. At certain times you just lock off away from him because his language is too deep. But if you look at, for example, Aysr Tafsir of Sheikh Abu Bakr al-Jazairi, contemporary, read his works, you find more of a flow, easy to read, especially for beginners. But obviously, one of the best sources is to read Tafsir ibn Katheer, Imam Shinqeeti, Adwa'ul Bayan, 8 volumes, beautiful tafsir as well to read through that, as well, inshallah. So you find that this fish, lahman tariya. So you find that some ulama of tafsir, they start talking about this, they go into the concept of fish, the ahmiyatul fish, importance of it, and it's a preserved type of food, and the fish oils, it regulates your cholesterol, etc. All this science that you find inside there. Where you lose the fish, you will find him. There are some downfalls to eating too much fish as well, I won't mention them now. So he left this task to the young boy that was with him. وَإِذْ قَالَ مُوسَى لِفَتَاهُ لَا أَبْرَحُ حَتَّى أَبْلُغَ مَجْمَعَ الْبَحْرَيْنِ أَوْ أَمْضِيَ حُقُبًا. Says Musa said to his young boy, لَا أَبْرَحُ, I'm not going to give up. Look at the commitment of Musa alayhi salam. He's not like many of us. Remember Musa alayhi salam, you read his seerah, you find ajab, strange things about Musa alayhi salam. He walked to Madian. You find that ulama tafsir, they talk about that, the skin of the bottom of his feet, was ripped, his lips turned green, he was eating the leaves from the trees, and he walked there. When he went there and he saw the girls, the 2 daughters of Shu'aib alayhi salam, if we take that view, they were his daughters, and he saw the shepherds all around them, and he still had the strength to pull up the bucket of water for them. And there was a whole group of men doing that. That shows that Musa alayhi salam, the man of strength that mashallah Musa alayhi salam had been given. And his commitment, لا أبرح حتى أبلغ مجمع البحرين أو أمضي حقبا. I'm going to carry on this journey until I come to the location of the two rivers where they meet, أو أمضي حقبا, or until I spend, the meaning of حقب is 70 or 80 years. Another view is a lifetime. If I have to spend the whole of my life trying to find that pathway, I'm going to do that, was Musa alayhi salam. And you find the boy with him was Yusha' bin Nun. Yusha' bin Nun, after Musa alayhi salam, becomes a leader of Bani Israel after Musa alayhi salam. This is what you call a rihla fi talab al-ilm, a journey for the quest of knowledge. People today can't pick up a book and read a book and just close the book, get tired. People can't listen to something systematically and go through it carefully. People can't have somebody sitting in a halaqah. So think about the rihla of Musa alayhi salam. And that's why you find that the journey of knowledge is a long journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A very long journey to gain that wisdom and that understanding and the appreciation of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then you find the location, when they reached a rock in which they both lay down their heads and they slept. Maraj al-Bahraini yaltaqiyan, this is the location where the 2 waters they meet, the salt and the fresh water where they meet. And look at deviant tafsir of this. Maraj al-Bahraini yaltaqiyan, where the 2 waters meet. The Shia said that this is where Fatima meets Ali. يَخْرُجُ مِنْهُمَا اللُّؤْلُؤُ وَالْمَرْجَانِ, and comes out of them the pearls and the corals. Al-Hassan wal-Hussein. This is what we call deviancy at its prime level. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about where the 2 rivers meet, the salty water and the sweet water. They say this is Fatima meeting Ali, getting married. And from them 2 come Al-Hassan wal-Hussein. So if you read the works of the Shia, people say, why do we highlight? It's in their works. وَإِذْ قَالَ مُوسَى لِقَوْمِهِ لَا إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تَذْبَحُوا بَقَرًا. We told Musa alayhi salam to sacrifice the baqarah. The Shia say in their works, baqarah bima'na Aisha. And then you want us to have dialogue with you? There's no way that Ahlul Sunnah will have dialogue with Ahlul Shia. If that's your belief. And remember, the mass amount of Shia at the moment, they are rawafid. They are people who are rejectors of the companions. And they have a concept of belief. Obviously, I'm mentioning this because we're coming in the days of Muharram, whereby you'll find that they'll be beating themselves and torturing themselves. And let them torture themselves more. Because it's got nothing to do with the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This torturing, the suffering that they place upon themselves. And so obviously if we go back to the works, you find great fallacies inside there. Now whereby you find that the 2 rivers met, going back to the topic, عَيْنٌ يُقَالُ لَهَا الْحَيَاةُ. This is the fountain of the river, which is called the river of life. And whatever is dead gets touched by that water will come back alive. So some splashes or some drops fell upon the fish, it began to move and it got out. فَاتَّخَذَ سَبِيلَهُ فِي الْبَحْرِ سَرَبًا. and it went into the river and it made a tunnel. And Yusha, he witnessed this. But he forgot to mention it, and they carried on the journey during the rest of the day and the whole night. The next morning, Musa alayhi says to him, now look at Musa now, he says to him, آتنا غداءنا لقد لقينا من سفرنا هذا نصبا. Bring our meal to us now, because indeed we have suffered from this journey great exhaustion. So Musa did not get tired until he had passed the place that Allah had ordered, and he'd gone so far away, and then he remembers that, or the boy then remembers to bring the breakfast, and he says, وَمَا أَنْسَانِيهُ إِلَّا الشَّيْطَانِ أَنْ أَذْكُرَهُ وَاتَّخَذَ سَبِيلَهُ فِي الْبَحْرِ عَجَبًا. He said that shaitan is the one that, that made me forget. The shaitan's job is to make us forget, to distract us. Talbis of Iblis, the deception of the devil. That's his task, to deceive people, to distract people throughout our journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Musa alayhi salam said, ذَلِكَ مَا كُنَّا نَبْغِ فَارْتَدَّ عَلَى آثَارِهِمَا قَصَصًا. He said, that's what we were searching for. So they began to follow their footsteps to go back to that location. There they found a man covered with a garment. فَإِذَا رَجُلٌ مُسَجًّا بِثَوْبٍ. A man who's covered with a garment, and Musa alayhi salam gives him salam. And the man says, is there such a greeting in your land? So he gives him salam, and the man's asking him, is there such a greeting inside your land as well as the giving of salam? The man was Al-Khidr. And why has he been given this name? Ulama talk about the reason for why Al-Khidr has been given this name, as you find one in the hadith collected in the Sunnah, in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad, and also a similar hadith in the Sahih of Imam Bukhari, is إِنَّمَا سُمِّيَ خَضِرًا لِأَنَّهُ جَلَسَ عَلَى فَرْوَةٍ بَيْضَاءٍ فَإِذَا هِيَ تَحْتَزُّ مِنْ تَحْتِهِ خَضُرًا. That if he was to sit upon a withered vegetation, a wide open any land, and then if he was to get up from that location, it would turn green. So thus you find that green becomes the color of the Sufiya. So the green turban that you find goes back to Khidr alayhi salam, this concept of wearing the green turban. So one extreme to the other. From a righteous individual, he becomes a wali. From a wali, he becomes a leader of the awliya. From the leader of the awliya, he becomes a qutub. From a qutub, he becomes eternal. He's living in Aynul Hayya. So remember we said that water of life, he's living inside it, so he's living eternally. From there, he becomes you come to all types of extremes about this individual that you find, that he is the green man or the green one. You'll be quite surprised about this. He's Islam's patron saint of cannabis. That's what some Muslims have written about Khidr alayhi salam. You can go and research this. And they claim that the shrine is in Kataragama in Colombo in Sri Lanka. And some believe that he's still living alive today. And some believe he's an angel. The only extreme that Ahl Sunnah go to is from a righteous individual, is some take on the opinion that he was a Nabi, that he was a prophet. That's the only two views that you find. Either he was a righteous individual, or the extreme view is that he was a prophet. Because why? Because there's certain actions that he done and certain words that he said that shows that he was a prophet. And this is the opinion of Ibn al-Jawzi, Imam Razi, and Shaykh Shinqeeti takes the view that he is a Nabi, just like Musa alayhi salam. رَحْمَةً مِّن رَبِّكَ وَمَا فَعَلْتُهُ عَنْ أَمْرِي. He said, this is the mercy of my Lord, وَمَا فَعَلْتُهُ عَنْ أَمْرِي. I did not do this out of my own command, my own action. So some of the ulama are trying to interpret this, to highlight, this is a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also the verse that we're on, فَوَجَدَ عَبْدًا مِّنْ عِبَادِنَا. He found a servant from amongst our servants, آتَيْنَاهُ رَحْمَةً مِّنْ عِنْدِنَا. We delivered mercy upon this individual, وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِنْ لَدُنَّا عِلْمًا. We'd given him some certain knowledge. Meaning that the knowledge he'd been given is the knowledge of prophethood. So then he said, who are you? He said, I am Musa. He said, who are you? Musa? Musa of Bani Israel. So he didn't say, I'm Musa the Nabi. He said, I'm Musa of the people of Bani Israel. So then he says to him, look, Inni ala ilmin min ilmillah. Musa alayhi salam says to him, look, really there's some knowledge I have which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to me. Allamanihi la ta'lamuhu anta. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught me and you don't know about it. Wa anta ala ilmin min ilmillahi. Allamaka Allahu la a'lamuhu. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught you something that I don't know, and I need to take that from you. So look at the adab of Musa alayhi salam. He doesn't come and say to him, I'm Musa, I'm Nabiullah, I'm the Prophet of Allah, I'm Kalimullah, the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to. He say, look, I've been given some knowledge that's been bestowed upon me that possibly you don't know about that knowledge. And you've been given some knowledge that I don't know about, and I need to extract that knowledge from you. Shows once again the adab, the fine character of Musa alayhi salam. Gentle terms, the seek of knowledge. قَالَ لَهُ مُوسَى هَلْ أَتَّبِعُكَ. Musa says to him, can I please follow you? أَتَّبِعُكَ. Can I have suhbah with you, companionship? Can I remain with you? عَلَى أَن تُعَلِّمَنِي مِمَّا عُلِّمْتَ رُشْدًا. That I can, أن تعلمني مما علمت رشدا, that I can gain some benefit and some guidance from being with you. Now look at that in comparison to young, new Muslims. People who become Muslims for a month, or 6 months, or a year. And a person who's been a Muslim for 20 years, 25 years of their life, and I try to feel some comparison between those individuals. Musa alayhi salam is well versed, but look at his etiquette. هل أتبعك, can I follow you? Can I be with you? Can I learn from you? Can I benefit from you? So people, after 1 month of studying, 6 months of studying, they like to challenge their teachers, like to speak ill of their teachers, challenge other individuals. Islam is not a challenge. Wallahi, there's no challenge in Islam. Islam is only a way of trying to better your own self. If a person hasn't read certain works, we don't know. Wallahu a'lam. Strengthen the individual, give them some works of something that you may have read that's beneficial. Shaykh, why don't you read this? Why don't you study this? Why don't you look into this? Have you thought about this topic? Have you looked into this issue? Have you looked into this affair? هكذا, you strengthen an individual and benefit people. Thus you find that via experience. Khidr is not arrogant, but he's been given some foresight. He says to him, إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ الصَّبْرَ. You're not going to have patience with me. You're not going to have patience with me. And thus you find that tajriba, experience, is a big thing. Because the way many of the youth, they're inexperienced. They don't have experience. So Khidr has seen that in Musa alayhi salam. He's got a strong personality. He's strong iman. But Khidr can highlight that, you're going to give me problems on this journey. You're going to be difficult on this journey. And I'm telling you now, لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ الصَّبْرَ. You're not going to have patience with me. Musa promises to be patient with him. So they set out on that journey. I'm sure that we're all familiar with the story. Until they come, until a boat passes by, or a boat comes to them. And then they board that boat. فَانْطَلَقَ حَتَّى إِذَا رَكِبَ فِي السَّفِينَةِ خَرَقَهَا. They both board the ship, and then he takes out the plank and he breaks the plank. When they get to the other side, قَالَ أَخَرَقْتَهَا لِتُغْرِقَ أَهْلَهَا لَقَدْ جِئْتَ شَيْئًا إِمْرًا. He said, what are you doing here? These people show goodness to you. You come with something evil, you break their boat. After they take you to the other side. قَالَ لَمْ أَقُلْ إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَئِيَ صَبْرًا. Did I not say to you, you're not going to have patience with me? I'm telling you, you're not going to have patience with me. قَالَ لَا تُؤَاخِذْنِي بِمَا نَسِيتُ. Don't take me for what I forgot. وَلَا تُرْحِقْنِي مِنْ أَمْرِ عُسْرًا. And do not be hard upon me for my affair with you. Take it easy with me, Shaykh. I made the mistake, leave me alone. So that's what you find. فَكَانَتِ الْأُولَى مِنْ مُوسَى نِسْيَانًا. So the first time was your mistake, Ya Musa. You slipped, so we let you off. That was nisyanan, that was forgetfulness. That's acceptable. And then it's time to teach him another lesson as well. That whilst they're inside that boat, that you find that a bird comes and it rests on the end of the ship or the safina, and it pecks its beak into the ocean and takes away a small drop of the ocean or the water. And Khidr says to him, your knowledge and my knowledge, in comparison to the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is that small drop of water in the beak of that bird. So Musa, you think you know a lot, and you may think, I know a lot. But that in relation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very, very minimal. That's why you find, وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. The knowledge that insan has been given is a minute knowledge. مَا عِلْمِي وَعِلْمُكَ فِي عِلْمِ اللَّهِ إِلَّا مِثْلُ مَا نَقَصَ هَذَا الْأُصْفُورِ. My knowledge, your knowledge in comparison to the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that small amount of water in the beak of that sparrow, that bird. وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ. Over every single knowledgeable individual is the one who is full of knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When they disembarked from the boat and whilst walking on the shore, Khidr kills a boy, just grabs him and kills him. أَقَتَلْتَ نَفْسًا زَكِيَّةً بِغَيْرِ نَفْسٍ لَقَدْ جِئْتَ شَيْئًا نُكْرًا. How can you kill an innocent boy, a pure boy, without any justification? لَقَدْ جِئْتَ شَيْئًا نُكْرًا. You come with something repulsive, something evil. And once again, Khidr says to him, did I not tell you that you will not have patience with me? Musa said, listen, give me one final chance. If I ask again, then you need to get rid of me. So they entered into a town. They refused to entertain them. They refused to take care of them. They refused them any hospitality, and they told them to leave the town. As they leave the town, you find that Khidr alayhi salam, or Khidr, he finds a wall about to drop. فَأَقَامَهُ. He fixes this wall. Once again, Musa alayhi salam, look at Musa, no sabr. وَدِدْنَا أَنَّ مُوسَى كَانَ الصَّبْرَ حَتَّى يَقُصَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا مِنْ خَبَرِهِمَا لَوْ لَبِثَ مَعَ صَاحِبِهِ لَأَبْصَرَ الْعَجَبِ. The Prophet Muhammad highlights that if Musa alayhi salam had that extra bit of patience, he would have seen many strange things. But because he made that promise, you need to keep yourself away from me if I ask again. And that's why the relationship was stopped there. Other than Musa alayhi salam had the sabr, he would have seen many more strange things of what Khidr alayhi salam would have done. Then comes the explanation of the actions of Khidr. السفينة وكان وراءهم ملك يأخذ كل سفينة غصبا. كان وراءهم, Ibn Abbas says, كان يقرأ أمامهم. In front of them was a king. So when they got to the other side, he would take the boat and take it by force. So it was better that he breaks the plank of wood, that they can repair it. So when a king comes to take the boat, it's disabled. And they can repair it and they can use the boat again. So Khidr alayhi salam was trying to protect this family. أَمَّا الْغُلَامُ وَأَمَّا الْغُلَامُ فَكَانَ أَبَوَاهُ مُؤْمِنَيْنِ. As for the young boy, his parents were Muslims. Ibn Abbas will read this verse, وَأَمَّا الْغُلَامُ فَكَانَ كَافِرًا. So the reading that we have is وَأَمَّا الْغُلَامُ فَكَانَ أَبَوَاهُ مُؤْمِنَيْنِ. He would read it وَأَمَّا الْغُلَامُ فَكَانَ كَافِرًا وَكَانَ أَبَوَاهُ مُؤْمِنَيْنِ. That the boy was a disbeliever and his parents were believers. So al-ghulam alladhi qatalahu al-Khadir tubi'a yawm tubi'a kafiran. The young boy that was killed by Khidr was a disbeliever from the day that he was born. So he had to be taken out of the way. And you find that their love for him might make them follow him in disbelief. So this young boy had to be stopped. And thus you find لا يقضي الله للمؤمن من قضاء إلا كان خيرا له. There's no decree upon the individual, upon the believer, except for something good. So externally, Musa found it something hard and difficult. How can Khidr kill this young boy? But it was something beneficial, because this individual would go and harm the parents at a later stage, or lead them into kufr and disbelief. Then you find some ulama tafsir, they highlight that they were given a new child. And the child that were given was a jariyah, was a girl on this occasion. So even though gender doesn't matter, it's the good action and the piety, but some ulama, they highlight this to show that girls and daughters will lead the individual into paradise as well. As we know, many of the different narrations that you find, whoever has two daughters and brings them up and takes care of them will be like this with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So all an encouragement, that gender doesn't matter, is that most times they could be the source of a person entering into paradise, because many times sons are just ruthless and just don't really seem to care about their parents, etc. And then you find the jidar. وَأَمَّا الْجِدَارُ فَكَانَ لِغُلَامَيْنِ يَتِيمَيْنِ. As for the wall, it belonged to the two orphan children. And here you find, what is the extraction that we learn here? Is leave something behind for your family, for your progeny. So their father left behind some wealth for them. So as long as that wall remained there, it should remain there for a good span of years, and when it does collapse and the treasure is discovered, etc., then obviously the children will be at an age, the two orphans, to use that wealth. But he left something for them. So here you find that leaving behind wealth or some form of saving of property, there's no haraj, there's no harm in doing that. Rather than your progeny, you find many athar as well, many narrations about companions wanting to donate all of their wealth, etc., and he encourages them, no, leave something behind for your family. Do you want your family to go and beg around from people? So that's an extraction. There's no harm in leaving something behind for one's family. Another extraction that you find, these people, they threw them out. Look at the action of Khidr. Do good to people who be bad to you, because opposites attract. So people who show badness to you, you show goodness to them. That's the sunnah. Not people who show badness to you, I'll be bad to them, I'll be evil to them. Like what yesterday, one of the River brothers in our class was highlighting that. He was saying that, I would wash the feet of my father, even though he's a non-Muslim. Because first there was animosity between me and him. And then I've reflected and began to think that no, even though he's still my father at the end of the day. So he said that's the type of action, puts us to shame. And he's highlighted this is the way that we should be behaving towards our parents. And third extraction we find is at times do actions to seek no reward. So Khidr just erects the wall and he walks away, finish. Even the people call him back, why have you done this? What are you doing? Why are you doing this action for? Finish. So Muslim should leave, the mu'min should leave something in his dunya that nobody knows about. A good action left behind is walks away. Even yourself, you forget about it. And on the day of judgment, you find that the person who gave with his right hand or concealed it, and on that day it will be shown, presented in front of that individual. So a person should try to find an opportunity whereby you can benefit someone or benefit the community without anybody knowing about it, and only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has knowledge about that. And then comes the concept of the hidden knowledge. وَمَا فَعَلْتُهُ عَنْ أَمْرِي. I did not do that out of my own knowledge, out of my own affair, my own command. ذَلِكَ تَأْوِيلُ مَا لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ عَلَيْهِ صَبْرًا. That is the ta'wil of that which you don't have sabr about. So the actions of Khidr are not his own special actions. They are still a form of revelation and inspiration from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling him what to do. So when people, once again, as we began, we tried to extract that these people have certain actions and certain commands and certain rights that they can follow. La, that's not true. Because the Qur'an here itself is concluding, وَمَا فَعَلْتُهُ عَنْ أَمْرِي. I didn't do this out of my own will. This is something that's been bestowed down by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.